I'll call this special school committee budget meeting to order on March 25th, 2014. And glad to see a lot of people here again tonight. And you have the budget materials have been distributed, correct?
I distributed the agenda, and there's a packet from the Warren Finance Committee.
This is his packet.
And that's what I expected to have you have, but I'm also going to give you some more things as I speak.
Okay.
All right?
So I'll turn this over to our superintendent.
Okay. This was a surprise for us. We're having an emergency meeting that I've called. If people wonder whether you can call one or not with proper notice, when certain instances happen whereby you have news that is so dramatic that you need to deal with it as quickly as possible, and you have a situation where it was noticed that our board would be here tonight joining the Warren Finance meeting at 6:30, I felt that it was extremely important based on the news from the state and the Department of Education as far as what our aid profile will be this year, that we discuss it in a meeting informally before the Warren Finance Committee meets, and then we talk about possible solutions, and then after the Warren Finance meeting, we will react to the suggestions that they've made, and then also take a look at how we think that we will adjust to what we found was $171,000 less than aid than we expected. So I'll read from my superintendent's report, and I'll pass that around.
You got it in the email.
And that's before our table.
Okay.
Another tree.
So the
Ken?
Yeah, I got it.
Andy, you need one? There you go. If you don't, I'll take one. Thank you. There you go, thanks.
I want to thank California for working closely with Kim again on the information as it was breaking from the state. Kim was able to download it on Saturday. There was the site itself was out for repair for a little while on Friday afternoon when Kim was trying to look at what the projected aid actually is, and we were flabbergasted. As I said, I'm uncomfortable about to report that we may receive as much as $171,000 less than this year. We had budgeted last year $397,000. We put in this year's revenue $397,000. But the state now tells us that our aid could be as little as $226,104. Now, the only explanations that we can determine is that our decreasing student numbers, particularly in special education, are creating a lowered aid, but also there's some talk about how the state is impacted by the changes of these MSADs that are dropping from cooperatives and into their own districts. Our auditor from Mr. Hall, Bill Hall from
RHR Smith.
Okay. He suggests that this isn't the last gasp, but the last aid figure will probably be a little more than this. Now, I don't know how much more, whether it's 1,000 or 10,000, but for us, because we don't know that it could be any higher than what this absolute minimum number would be, the 226,104, that's what we have to deal with as part of our revenue stream. Again, 171,000 less than last year. And we all agree that all of us that worked on the budget and the board who helped us, the school committee who helped us, we developed what we think is the absolute best budget to provide the needs of the students and meet the goals that we were expecting for 14-15. But we had originally, in that very well-crafted budget, which had a reduction of about 90,000 or so, we said that we would probably also have a tax levy decrease of 80,768. But as we can say now, if we're going to be hit with 171,000 less revenue, we're not going to be able to have a tax levy decrease unless we go back in and just tear the school apart, in my opinion, and re-budget but then not meet the goals that we really need. So, it's late news that we're getting from the state, and where I'm saying we're reluctant to reopen the budget meetings. I'm offering a solution that stabilizes the tax rate. I'm suggesting that the $120,000 that we use as a transfer from fund balance last year be reconsidered again this year. What we had decided in the meetings with the board, with the school committee, was that we would take $40,000 from fund balance in this new budget to give us just a little bit of room if we had a special ed situation that was not predicted. So I was suggesting we use $40,000, but now I'm suggesting we go back to the same allocation of fund balance that we did last year, which is $120. And that $120 gives us $80,000 basically to defray the cost of the budget without affecting the taxpayers. And then if we say if we're not able to give back 80 and we put in another 80, that's 160 of the 170 that we're looking for because of that reduction. And so I'll read it again where it says, if we raise that fund balance allocation from $40,000 back to last year's $120,000, then we would be asking for an increase of the tax levy totaling only $10,320, despite receiving $171,000 less in state aid. And that's a decrease of 43%. I was just amazed that it could be that devastating, it could be that much for a little school district like ours. But, as it says, if as our auditor suggests, the state aid comes in a little more than the currently predicted $226,104, the final tax levy may be almost the same as the current year. So I'm also reminding everyone of what we absorbed this year too. In a year with pay increases, medical benefit increases, we still reduced our budget by $95,820, or a 1.85% reduction in the budget. And you can see, by my plan, we'd be absorbing almost all the $171,000 state aid reduction, and but it still works out to be the possibility of a $10,000 increase in the tax levy, or 0.22%. That's 1/5 of 1%. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass out the corrected sheets for revenue and fund balance, so we can look at it on the sheets that you're familiar with from what I've given you in the past.
Kind of clarification?
Yes.
So you just want to, for particularly the audience, too, when you're saying an increase of the 10,000 or the 0.22% in the tax levy, that's an increase of what we voted on last meeting, not from last year.
It's an increase from last year.
Oh, from last year.
Last year.
Okay.
From last year.
Ken, is there any chance of any more RSUs closing before, so that it would affect next year's money, or is that done for this year?
That question I do not know, and I'm not sure how much the impact really is.
Well, what they've done is, instead of Saco and Wiscasset getting the money from all the little districts, each district is getting their own money, so they have to refigure all that.
Right.
So if another RSU closes, then they have to split the money through all those towns, so.
Yeah, you're right, but I just don't know the answer to that question. Very good question. If you would pass some of these out. Some of these.
And Ken, point of clarification, the 171 less is less than we thought we were going to get this coming year.
We put in the
It's
revenue,
111 less than the current year that we're in.
we put in our revenue stream, if you remember the revenue sheet that we showed last time, we put in a figure of $397,000 in revenue. And if you look at this revenue sheet, that's what Paul is talking about. This is the graphic of, or the numbers that I'm referring to in my narrative. If state aid is 226,104 on the revenue page instead of the 397, and the nutrition reimbursement stays the same, and the Medicaid stays the same, that means you've got a subtotal of revenue of 482,104, which is, again, 171,000 less than we had before. But if we put in a transfer of fund balance of 120 instead of the 40 that I had in my sheet a week ago on Monday the 19th, or 17th when we visited it last, it would give us a total estimated revenue of 431,104. So how that fits in is that on the balanced tax levy sheet, the next one, if we stay with the budget that we're suggesting, which was the decrease of 1.85% over last year's budget, $5,096,253, and we put in the new small revenue stream, 431,104. That means the amount to be raised by taxes, $4,665,149, is a small increase. It's $10,320, or 1/5 of that. I have a question for the selectmen, if you don't mind. How many appraised properties that pay taxes are there in the town of Acton?
I'm not sure. About 30,000, isn't it?
Not 30,000 homes, I'm talking about homes.
Right. Oh, I don't know about homes.
We could say taxing units, but say homes. Rough idea how many?
We have approximately $500 million in tax base.
Yeah, that's how we get it from the state, is the tax base.
Right, but why I mention it is, if we have 1,000 homes, and we have an increase of $10,000, it's $10 per house. I like to put it in the easiest way of thinking.
They're all the same size.
If they're all the same size, right. I mean,
They're all identical.
But the people who are on the lakefront get soft the hardest, and they don't have a chance to vote. That's,
I'm just trying to oversimplify.
I
If we go back to my report then for a second, and it says, with a verification from Paul Poyet, Kim has prepared new calculations that result in the changes to Articles 13 and 14 that would have to be passed at tonight's meeting. Enclosed are the copies of those changes that I'm recommending. So we'll pass those out next, and then we will obviously react to any changes that the committee, the Warrant Finance Committee, has considered. So this is for information purposes, basically, that I'm passing this out. And one other item that I end with on my commentary is something that was started before that we think is an excellent idea in terms of protecting our facility and our grounds. At one time, was it 2 years ago or 1 year ago, Kim, the date on when the 50,000 was set aside?
These are 2012.
2012.
Okay. In 2012, your school committee authorized a transfer of $50,000 from the fund balance or from the reserves that were undesignated that the school had generated, and we have spent all but about $3,500 of that. So, in those 2 years. What we're suggesting as a new Article 19 for you to consider is to bring that back to the 50,000 that we did 2 years ago. And in looking at it a little closer, it appears that that really should be a voted upon item, or at least a voter notified item, rather than strictly a item in a school committee. Each state's a little different. In New York, the school committee had that kind of authority to do that without public notification, but here in Maine, I believe you do have to have that. So that's basically the report, and the state aid is a 6-page document that we sent you by email, and if there are some questions about that, I hate to pass the buck, but I'd love to have Kim answer any of those questions that you might have. We're at 226, how that 226 is built.
Yep, okay. Well, this came right off the state website? Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So, and when you do the calculations, you basically take the last couple of pages, 5 and 6, section 5 and section 6. These are the numbers that you plug in to the EPS calculation to come up with that. Yeah. And so basically, on section 6, you take the total that they're going to provide for the subsidy, That's your first number up here. Your second number is on section 5. And up in the top part, there's the amount for local contribution. And that's the $3,422,000 that gets plugged in here. Do you really want me to go through the whole formula? You got it? Or I keep going.
It's the same thing you went through last time, only with different figures, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if any, you don't really need to, I don't think, unless somebody has questions about it, because it's a template that the state provides.
Yep.
And they provide the numbers for you to plug into it. And so,
I'd like to make one comment on that. Doing some research, because I was troubled by the fact that our reduction was so major, 43% or less. I did a little surfing of other school districts, because all of these are on the same website, of course. And while I thoroughly enjoy the fact that Acton is number one on the Department of Education's site.
we are.
Easy to
number
find,
one.
easy to
We are number one, and we're number one with a zip code, which is fun to see too. But I don't really like the fact that it appears we're the lowest paid school district in the state. Not quite now. I went hunting. First I went over to our friends in Sanford, who are going to get $19,042,691. And that means that 62.15% of their budget is taken care of by your state taxes. That's an interesting number, 62%.
What did Sanford get?
Sanford, Sanford, that's what I said, $19,042,000, and that's 62% of their budget.
And if they lose 30% of their funding like we did just now,
Right.
they're gonna be cutting turkeys.
Right, okay.
That's a technical term.
Right. One town that is very much like us on the coast rail is Eastport, similar in size. Now, the state decided that their contribution this year will be 6.9%. Ours is 6.2%. As I said, Sanford's is 62%, ours is 6.2%. So the only one I could find, I didn't look at them all, but the only one I could find that I thought might, and I was looking through the small ones, is a little island called Long Island. And of course, that's where I worked last.
we know the superintendent there.
So anyway, they beat us. Their revenue from the state is only 4.2%, but their budget's quite a bit small. So,
There's like 20 kids on the island. I don't even know if it's 20.
right, okay. So I did my homework. It didn't make me feel any better, but I had to do it.
No.
Right. Okay.
So I would also like to support your $10 increment that you said might go up our taxes by that amount, because that's exactly how they sold the police officer to us. They said something like $5 or $8 per household. Isn't it worth it? That's how they sold
I think it was per
it.
100,000.
But wasn't that a
But then they
grant?
worked it out to dollars and said it would be like $8.
Wasn't that a grant that's up now? Gonna be up?
So,
The
Yeah.
grant's for 3 years.
Yeah.
We're in the second year of the 3 years.
Only the second year?
Did you have to pay for the car too?
we will
It was all
have
part of the
to,
grant.
we'll have to,
It was $87,000 a year.
because they only use the car for 3 or 4 years or
No,
something.
we own the car.
Oh, that's good, we own the car.
Yeah, but they're not allowed to ride it or something.
Yeah, we own half a
for
car.
5 years or something. So
We own a half a
We have the front, we own the front half, and Chaplain.
Shapley owns the other half.
So I would ask, based on my preparations for this meeting, and we have only a few minutes left before we semi-adjourn, to be able to go into the Warrant and Finance Committee meeting. Is there any one question or any question anyone has about anything I've provided?
Now, what we need to do as a board now, since we voted on all these articles last week at our meeting, we need to rescind the votes from last week and vote in these new figures, correct?
We won't know whether the new figures until Paul's committee, the Warrant and Finance Committee, has made some.
All they get to do is make their recommendations
Right.
based on what you present to them, so you have to present them the final budget. So whatever you decide on these last 2 articles plus the new article you added,
Right.
they have to vote first.
We have to re-vote on these two.
We have to re-vote on these articles.
You
because
don't
we-
have to.
No.
All it is a recommendation.
Right.
So, I mean, we've gone through town meeting before where we had one set of recommendations, from earlier in the scheme of things, from the school committee, and then another set from warrant and finance, and the motion was to go with warrant and finance recommendation. So, that can certainly happen.
Yeah, technically, you don't have to do anything. Correct?
Right, we can look
Yeah,
into
That is true. You'll have to make a recommendation of the new numbers rather than using your
Well, we would
recommendation.
make the numbers and we would make the new recommendations.
We've made our recommendation last week on the numbers. We voted on all these articles last
Right.
week at our meeting.
Right.
So if we want to go back and say that we are voting now to move $120,000 forward in revenues instead of $40,000 in revenue in undesignated funds to offset taxes, then it would seem sensible to me that we would re-vote on these articles and give them to the warrant and finance committee as our recommendation. I think that's.
Plus you have to vote on the new one anyways, because you vote on that one.
Yeah, the 13 and 14 change, where the 120,000 versus the 40,000 comes in is 13 and 14 change. And 19 is the new one that,
Vote to vote on anyway.
so that one, so,
My suggestion is we vote on all three again. I think just for perceptions, when the warrant and finance and the school are recommending different things, I think that's confusing to the public if they're the same. I think it's just,
So you can amend
Perception
last
wise.
week's article too.
Okay.
that's what I
and re-vote.
But
recommend.
we don't know what the warrant and finance committee is gonna
Well,
say.
we'll know, we voted last week to tell them what we were recommending to them. So
We're just
we
gonna
need
change
to,
that.
we need to amend these, because we're still recommending the same things to them, only with some amended numbers. So then we'll take their recommendations and consider those.
Right, but we've also gotten up to the microphone and said, as a school committee, we recommend the warrant and finances numbers or what they recommend.
Which I think is
You know,
fine. I think that's just confusing sometimes to the public.
Is there 5 that show up?
So people watch it, people talk, and it's like, what's going on?
That was mean.
Simple, I think the simpler the better.
Okay.
Is it simpler now or simpler then?
Then I will look for a motion from the school committee to amend Article 13.
Does it have to go back to the person who motioned initially? Do you know, to amend it, or?
I don't think so, because
Not-
it's a new motion.
It was actually, once it's accepted by the chair, that motion is actually out of the hands of the person who made the motion.
that's my,
Okay, so I will ask for a motion to amend Article 13 so that the recommendation for Article 13 would be from the school committee to recommend $3,476,262 for Article 13.
All right, I'll make a motion that the school committee recommends $3,476,262.
Mary and Jeanette, any discussion?
May I make a bit of a comment about this? The last couple of years, the school committee has been recommending one number, which I guess is the second number. The way this is, the article is phrased, there's an appropriation to see how much will be appropriated, and then to see how much will be raised. And our motion, the last couple of years, has been to appropriate a certain amount and raise a certain amount. You can choose to go that route or not. I merely make that statement of what we're going to be doing, and you can choose to.
Do you want to amend yours,
Change
Mayor,
that
to
as you
say
see fit.
that the school committee recommends an appropriation of?
For Article 13 or 14,
Yes,
you're saying?
13,
14 has the two numbers.
Well, no,
It has two numbers.
yes, the numbers too.
yeah.
in the text, it's higher. And
So
Okay, so we're trying to raise the 3 million.
what we're saying is the school committee recommends an appropriation of, instead of raising, an appropriation of.
All right, the school committee recommends an appropriation of $3,476,262.
That sentence,
And Jeanette, you want to second
I'll
that?
second it, but it
Okay.
does say that in the first paragraph there. Right?
It does say it, it
Always
says it in the
that.
article.
Will appropriate.
Any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Cody?
So, I thought last week that our fund balance was around $120,000. So we're using all our fund, I thought that's what we said last. We're using all our fund balance?
900,000.
No, we're not using all of, no.
Our fund balance is 900,000? Okay.
Actually, it's like 805,000, 800,000.
Are we ready to vote? School committee, all those in favor? Mr. Driscoll, are you in favor?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, let's move on to Article 14. Let's see. School committee recommends that we raise and appropriate $1,323,877 in additional funds.
Wait, what number is correct here?
Yeah, the 1323877, yeah.
That's what, those are additional funds beyond.
Why is there a $10 difference? There's a $10 difference.
What's the type?
877 in the second paragraph is a typo, it should see 887.
Yeah, on the back it's
Like the
887.
first paragraph.
Sorry.
87.
See the first line, recommend in parentheses, it's 887. And then the second paragraph, it's 877.
Oh, okay. And the correct figure is 887?
I'm double checking, yeah.
887. So I look for a motion, please, for the school committee to make a recommendation to raise and appropriate $1,323,887 in additional local funds.
I'll make the motion to recommend to raise and appropriate $1,323,887.
Moved by Mary, seconded by Jeanette. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And now we'll vote on the new article at the bottom of the page on transferring funds to replenish the capital reserve fund, to see if the town of Acton will vote to transfer funds from the unexpended balances at the end of 2013-14 fiscal year to designated reserve capital account. This account is used for purposes for major renovations, capital equipment, and emergency repairs. I will look for a motion that the school committee recommend that the amount of $46,522 be transferred into the designated reserve capital account.
I'll make a motion to recommend $46,522 to the designated reserves capital account.
Seconded.
Mary and Kevin?
Question?
Could we have discussion on that? Just for clarification, this is all new to me, so go ahead, Debbie.
If you put this before the town and vote for this money to go into this account, do they have to go back to the town to vote to use it to spend it?
No, this is getting town
Okay.
approval.
So it's not to set up the same way as a town account?
No.
Okay, that's all I needed to know.
What this is, Jim, is the school committee back in 2012 voted to establish capital reserve account for unexpected things that come up for the building and grounds, like when we had to replace the well and some of the other things that have come up. We put $50,000 into that account. And from that account, we have taken expenditures for the new culvert out in back, for the building, the garage, moving of the garage. And it seems that also the security system came out of that account. So it's down to like $3,000 some dollars. So
$3,478 is...
this would bring it back up to the $50,000 that was established.
I guess my question is that when this originally was created, was it targeted for those issues? You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, when it was
The things,
originally
were they on the table and discussed by the people to create this?
No, this
Or it was just a fund that was...
something from Richard Mishu. He always wanted, he was on the capital improvement
It
committee.
was a recommendation from the long-term planning
Right.
committee at that time that we have an account established so that if something comes up, we've got the funds there to pay for it and have them available and ready to use, which we had to do some not too long ago.
It's really similar to the designated fuel account you guys have as well. You have 10,000 set aside in case the fuel for winter becomes more than
The
what.
fuel, the
you had
retirement
budgeted.
reserve, and the capital reserve, all
Right,
those.
right,
Yeah, I understand those, but those...
Yes.
Can
Can I ask, what is the total
different.
of all these undesignated funds?
You have, I don't have it all right in front of me, there's only three. You have,
Capital reserve, the retirement reserve, and the fuel reserve. Those are the three, right?
We have-
Those are-
Undesignated.
Yeah, we have a retirement fund.
Those are restricted.
I don't, yeah, these are designated, not undesignated, but designated funds.
Right.
We have one for retirement, which is, was set up and required by the state that we pay a certain amount of retirement. And that's in a certain fund. And then we have another designated fund of $10,000 that's a fuel account, so if the fuel costs exceed what we have budgeted in any given year, we can draw from that account. And then this is the third one, which is a maintenance and emergency account.
Did I hear you explain to someone that there wasn't $120,000 in the undesignated fund, that it was about $800,000?
There's about
Total
800,
funds.
805 in the schools, and there's about 870 in the towns, and that's after your town meeting. So it's over $1.5 million that are in the, like Tom said last week, which is important to know that. It's all in the general fund, even our undesignated fund. It's, on paper, it's a paper account is what it is, but it's actually, right, Tom, is that correct? Yeah, it's all in one big unit, but I don't know, I don't see this account here, the $50,000 is the same as a capital reserve, the retirement, or the fuel. It's almost like you're taking the people out of the decisions for some of the things, you know what I mean, too.
What do you mean?
I don't know, if whatever you're gonna do, it used to be when we used to have problems with, have an emergency meeting or something, and emergency town meeting to address them and have the people involved to talk about it, you know, this $50,000, it's just, you know, it's a lot easier for us, that's for sure, but it's taken.
It's a contingency fund, basically.
Yeah, right.
That's been an issue for the town.
We may not have to even touch it this year if we have a lucky year, but
Would that have to be reappropriated if desired, or is this appropriating it as well?
this is making it available as a contingency.
That's what this is doing, actually, it's redesignating it for us.
So
If
the word
we-
appropriate is not used, but that's what's intended.
If we, it would only be refilled, it would have to have, next year we'd have to have another article saying how much we wanted to raise to replenish that fund if it was used.
So the town does get involved somewhere.
Oh, yeah, they're gonna vote on this at town meeting.
But
See, the other thing with the
it's a blanket
No.
transfer.
But it's not a blanket as far as like the regular operating where things are paid, okay? So if an emergency comes up, like say the septic system goes and we need 4 pumps, and it would still be up to the committee to allow us to spend that money. In other words, it's just not something that we could just automatically say we're gonna do this.
But it's the committee, not the town.
Right, that's,
Right. So the
that's
town.
what I think Paul's referring to.
So if you had no fund balance, I mean, no, not fund balance, but no capital improvement
Reserve.
reserve, and the septic system failed,
It'd be a
you would still
town
get the
meeting.
money, because you'd go to the town for a special town meeting, and the town would say, we'll give you the money because you need to have your septic system
Right.
fixed.
In the meantime, we have to keep flushing toilets.
Scenario came up in 2002, I
It's
think.
just,
when the
it's
system
more,
failed.
it's a more efficient way of dealing with things when they come up.
Because
That's
you
what
have
it
to
is.
have a town meeting, you have to have it, I mean, that would cost more money than doing it the way we're doing it and have the reserved.
But what if you go for 2 years and you don't, 3 years and you don't have any capital
We just
issue?
let it sit there.
Then it doesn't go anywhere.
But you're not raising any more taxes.
What I'm saying is then why bother appropriating if we can get it when we need it?
Well, but get it when you
In
need
an
it
emergency
is
situation.
a public function, a vote, going through the procedure. And for a $50,000 amount, we just had a situation a couple of days ago whereby we didn't know how much it was going to cost, but it was an emergency in the plumbing that we didn't predict. Luckily, the costs were not very high, but we didn't, at the first, it happening, we didn't know they wouldn't be very high. So there are things, acts of God, Mother Nature, whatever, that you can't necessarily predict, but a figure like this, a $50,000 figure, is responsible, workable, and just allows you to do something quite quickly in the case of something that you did not expect.
It saves steps.
It's your Tom Chase.
It's the same.
Chase out of the general fund, and then again,
That's exactly what I'm thinking about, because when I was on the finance committee, he was the chair the whole
He's
time.
all over these.
And that's exactly my point. I got the same philosophy.
But it is in the general
The
fund.
Tom Chase philosophy.
No, I understand.
It's still in there, and it's still gaining fund if it doesn't need to be used.
Right.
It's still gaining interest if it doesn't have to be used. It isn't going anywhere. It's just giving the school committee
It's a,
the,
it's a control thing, who's gonna, who's
well, it's
controlling?
giving the school committee the ability
The authority to use
meet
it, not
up
the
with
townspeople.
emergencies as they come.
Like when Tom said, it was a 202 when something happened, they called a special town meeting and the people came and they talked about, and
Well,
then
we
about the
didn't have
issue.
to. We actually didn't have to that year, remember, because we got things going, but the septic system froze, so we shut the school down, right?
Yeah.
No, they didn't shut it down. They pumped the tank every day.
Pump the tank, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't shut down for a couple days, right?
Okay, can we, is there any more discussion on this, or can we go on and vote?
No, I
on
just
this?
want to
Can we move
understand
on?
what was.
Yeah, let's go.
That's fine.
Okay, so it's been moved by Barry, seconded by Kevin, that we transfer funds from the unexpended balance in the amount of $46,522 into a designated reserve capital account. Any further discussion? All those in favor? 5-0.
So would you like to adjourn temporarily?
Yeah.
until-
Before you adjourn, may I draw your attention once more to good old Article 13 in the spreadsheet? A and B, what I designate, okay, the 3.6 and 3.4, 3,000,006 and 3,000,004. Those are the two numbers that we're going to be voting to appropriate and raise respectively. I sort of thought I heard you appropriate the second number and not do anything with the first number. I'm not exactly sure, but regardless, there'll be two sets of recommendations. The town can figure it out on town floor, but I thought I'd give you the opportunity to rethink if in fact what I might have thought I heard is what I heard, and you're voting to appropriate the second number.
The second number is the number that we actually have to raise.
Correct.
Appropriate.
Raise and appropriate. They wrote raise and appropriate. I wrote raise
So
and
as long as you're
It's written right into the article.
So you did do two numbers?
No. No. Well, the first number
So that would,
on Article 13.
You can't write the number into the article, can you?
Yeah, that's how I think
It's already in there.
Oh, I know it is.
but
Yeah.
can I ask a clarifying question? It sounds like, for me, the confusion is, we're raising a number, we're appropriating a different number because some of that additional funds is coming from elsewhere. Is that correct? And that's for me where the confusion is coming from.
Wait a minute.
Where, is that?
No.
Let's let Kim
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess it's the,
In
why the
Article
difference?
13, okay, in Article 13, when it says, that's in the article, that says described in the Essential Programs and Essentials Funding Act, 3,648,000, that is the number that the state, when you go to section, well, it's in section 4.
That's the 97% number.
Yeah, the total municipal allocation distribution as a percentage of pupils. That's supposed to be 3,648,588. That's just a number that says This is the number that the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act requires. However, what you need to raise and appropriate is the $3,476,262. Let me get my...
Can I jump in real quick? I think I understand the confusion.
Okay.
I think when we said it, what we're doing is, and this is, I think, purely a grammar thing. The first part of the article talks about what we need to, what needs to be appropriated. But as a committee, we have to raise most of it, but not all. When we voted on it, I think we said raise and appropriate. That's not correct in my understanding. We're raising. Well, our recommendation is to raise a certain amount of money, because knowing other money is coming from elsewhere, then the correct amount will be appropriated. All we need to do is make a recommendation of what to raise, knowing the additional will come from somewhere else.
Correct.
It will be appropriated, because our recommendation and something else will equal that amount. So I think what we voted on was incorrect. I think we have to just say we make a motion to, we recommend a certain number to raise.
Yes.
And
He's
the
right.
appropriation. So it's purely just a
And
grammatical.
the real key to having this number in the...
I understand now. I didn't
Is
understand.
that it does come directly from the state, that's their 97% number.
Right.
And
We're raising the bulk.
in essence, we couldn't change it if we want to, because they said that's what the number is.
Correct. That first number that's within the article is the total cost of public education as described in the Essential Programs and Servicing Funding Act. That number comes from the state. It's nothing that we got.
I think it's a minor detail, but so I think what we recommended was slightly inaccurate.
But year after year, or the last whatever, these are the same
Talking about this right here.
written articles, except for the figures, right? Am I correct?
Exactly, because the
Exactly
articles
how it's
are
been.
designed by the state.
Right,
The
the
state gives you the
I'm
articles
not
and you
questioning
plug the
any of
numbers
that.
in.
I think just with what we said though, is that we are recommending to raise and appropriate. We're not recommending an appropriation, we're recommending a raising.
Right, because the second number is the amount to raise for the town's contribution of the total funding. So
We're not
this is an
recommending
amount that is
appropriation.
the town's portion of what's required
So
to
what we
meet
did
that
first on
number.
it was correct then, right?
Right, yeah, you just needed
raised it.
to raise $3,476,262. Yes, not appropriate,
You
raise.
didn't actually use either of those words in the first vote.
I said to appropriate.
Yeah, she
That's the
did
wrong
say
word.
appropriate.
I did say to appropriate. So I will amend my motion on Article 13 to say to raise $3,476,262.
I second that.
Now, Article 14,
Semantics.
are those words
Hold on, we
the
gotta
same and raise and appropriate in Article 14?
Yes,
Yes.
raise and appropriate is correct.
All those in favor of the amended? Okay, we'll look for a motion for the school committee to adjourn their workshop
To
and
adjourn temporarily, or we're done?
temporarily adjourn and
So moved.
I'll
turn
second
it over
it.
to the warrant and finance committee.
We need to vote.
All those in favor?